bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, her heirs and successors, according to law. So help me God.
Local plants. Okay. Thank you. Okay, over to you.
I, Raymond, Lord Plant of Highfield, do swear by Almighty God that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance to Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, their heirs and successors according to law. So help me God.
No trees.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, as set out in our manifesto, we will not compromise on our high environmental protection, animal welfare and food standards in our trade negotiations. The government's agriculture bill sets out our plans to reward farmers for enhancing our natural environment and for safeguarding the nation's high welfare standards. We will stand firm in trade negotiations to ensure any future trade deals uphold the standards farmers and consumers across the UK expect.
Well, I'm grateful to the noble Lord for that answer, and I'd like to welcome him to the front benches in this House. And I have no doubt at all of the sincerity of Her Majesty's Government's assurances, but there is widespread, and I would suggest justifiable concern, that our own livestock industry could be outcompeted by imports of cheap livestock products from animals reared to poorer standards of welfare and environmental matters. This might mean cheaper food, but I would suggest at a global cost to animal welfare and the environment, as well as at some risk to our own indigenous livestock enterprise. So could I ask the noble Lord the Minister, will the government enshrine in UK law its own manifesto commitments to require that imports of livestock products meet our high animal welfare and environmental standards?
I thank the noble Lord for his question. The UK, as he points out, has world-leading environmental and animal welfare standards, and that will not change. They are backed up in legislation, but even more importantly, they're backed both by producers and by consumers right across the land. There is no value to anyone in imposing high standards here on our own producers if we then allow low-standard imports of those same products. We would merely be undermining our farmers while exporting cruelty elsewhere.
My Lord, I declare my interest in animal welfare matters as set out in the register. I take the view that it is an abomination that live animals should be transported for very long distances, particularly to the continent, but even here within the UK. Can my noble friend assure me that this will not be allowed to continue when we have new rules upon this subject?
Hear, hear.
I thank my noble friend for her question. I very much share her concern and her views in relation to the live export of animals for fattening and for slaughter. The manifesto commitment on which this government was elected could not have been clearer on this issue. We are committed through that manifesto to taking steps to ending the live export of animals for fattening and for slaughter, and we will be consulting on the issue shortly, and all noble lords will be able to take part in that consultation. I encourage them to do so.
How is the Minister? Come on, we need a speaker here. Yeah. How is my lord? How does the minister reconcile the future for exports of our agricultural goods, whether they're animals or other agricultural products, and sustainability, when we are probably closing our opportunities of export to our near neighbours, and we'll be looking much further away? How do you both handle sustainability and animal welfare in those circumstances?
I thank the noble lady for her question, and I've very committed my life to the issue of sustainability. I'm proud of what we've achieved over the last 10 years, and I'm excited about what we will be achieving in the coming years, partially as a consequence of our leaving the European Union, the issue that the noble lady raises. We will be able to do things now that we've left the European Union that we could not do as members of the European Union. For example, we can scrap the common agricultural policy, as we are intending to do, and replace it with a new system where those payments are directly conditional upon the delivery of public goods like environmental sustainability, like animal welfare standards.
My Lords, whilst the government is negotiating trade deals with the USA in particular for meat, dairy products and eggs, which are generally produced to a much lower animal welfare standards than those produced here in the UK, the UK must insist on inclusion of a clause permitting the UK to require imports to meet our own animal welfare standards. As an alternative, if this is not possible, would the Minister consider imposing tariffs on imports that do not conform to UK welfare standards but are sufficiently high to safeguard our own farmers?
I thank the noble lady very much for her question, and I agree with the premise of her question that we certainly do not want to find ourselves in a position of importing egg products which fall below the standards we impose on our own producers. That is a commitment that this government has made. There are a number of different ways in which that can be achieved. She mentioned a ban as one option, and she mentioned tariffs as another option. It will not, I'm afraid, be for me in my portfolio to determine which of those options we choose, but our commitment is absolute. We will not allow our producers to be penalised by high standards in the UK, only to be undercut by imports that do not meet those standards. That would neither be right nor fair.
My Lord, may I declare my interests as a farmer are set out in the register. Despite all these verbal and manifesto pledges given by ministers, could my noble friend explain the recent remarks by the Prime Minister at the UK-Africa Investment Summit, welcoming Ugandan beef into this country without attaching any conditions relating to standards of production, traceability, or welfare at slaughter?
I thank the noble lord for his question. The Prime Minister was not saying anything new in his remarks. Ugandan beef already has tariff-free access to our market. As a less developed country, Uganda has duty-free and quota-free access for all products with the exception of arms and ammunition. But there are currently no imports of Ugandan beef, and the reason for that is that Ugandan beef does not meet the standards that are applied on imports into the European Union, and they do not meet the standards that will be required now that we've left the European Union. So the situation remains exactly the same.
I welcome the noble lord to his front bench duties and declare my interest in a farming enterprise as recorded in the register. For fair competition for farmers and consumer confidence for the public, equivalence of standards will be a difficult area in trade bills. During the recent trade bill in the last Parliament, amendments ensured that the maintenance of UK levels of statutory protection on welfare and environmental standards. Can the noble Lord the Minister confirm that this is now a way forward for government policy and that such necessary provisions will be contained in the various bills and regulations that will need to be enacted again?
I thank the noble lord for his question. I make 2 points, if I can. The first is that this government is committed to introducing a new sentience clause, and a much debated issue in the last Parliament. That's not simply the case of translating into UK law an EU principle. It will go much, much further when translated into UK law, because it will not have the exemptions. It will not apply only to a few narrow sectors. It will cross the entire decision-making process of government. The second thing is that our Environment Bill, which was introduced in the other place just a few days ago, is in and of itself, because of what it contains, a non-regression bill, a non-regression commitment that will require this government legally to build on the standards that we're proud of, but which we'd all, I think, like to see improved.
Baroness Benjamin.
My Lords,